The National Women's Council of Ireland is very proud to play a part in this launch of the Action Plan on UN Resolution 1325 today, on, as the Taoiseach has pointed out, day one of 16 days of action against violence against women. It is a very fine plan, and I'm here to represent the civil society organisations which took part in the consultation process which led to the NAP. And they include Amnesty, Trócaire, Irish Red Cross, Akidwa, the African Women's Network, and the National Women's Council. And there are many, many more of them who are all listed at the back of the report. And everybody played their part, as did indeed Aisling here and Milani in the front row here as academic contributors. We very much collectively commend the government for publishing this document and for inviting us as civil society members to contribute. We know that the civil servants often wished that you hadn't, and we did, as Mary mentioned, have some rocky moments, but we did ultimately work very well and very constructively together to produce a NAP which is in many significant ways quite unique. The positive involvement of government participants from a wide range of departments, I think, was a very welcome feature, and we hope that that will be continued into the monitoring evaluation process. And I think all of the speakers have referred to the importance of the implementation and the use of the monitoring and evaluation process, and Mary has referred to the urgency with which we need to start into that process. And I think when the Taoiseach has mentioned that the NAP is a powerful statement, it will be in the implementation that we will see just how powerful it actually is. There are many women in Ireland today who've experienced rape and other forms of gender-based violence during armed conflict or after armed conflict in their own persons or in their families in Rwanda, Somalia, Congo, Sudan, Zimbabwe, Angola, Bosnia, and in other countries. And this is one of the unique features, I think, about the Irish NAP. Ireland is the first developed country to recognise in its NAP a duty of care towards these women who are already living in our country. And I believe that the government did do this because of the civil society groups who brought the voices of these women to the table, and they were very compelling voices. They reminded us of the devastating effects of gender-based violence, and also that in many countries women are still at risk of appalling sexual violence at the hands of militias, armies, and indeed at the hands of armed men in their own families and communities. The work of the Consortium and of Irish Aid will be crucially important in ensuring that our NAP contributes in meaningful international interventions to stop this violence. Our National Action Plan also recognises that women experienced gender-based violence during the conflict in the north of this country. And indeed, I worked in a rape crisis centre in the north during the conflict, and I would have said that high levels of violence and domestic violence went masked. We call it the other violence when we refer to it now. It was masked by what was known as the violence. And I think in many cases that was to do with violence by men who were supposedly protecting communities, but who were using their status in that way to abuse women in their own families and communities. There's a huge amount of work to be done on this issue, and Mary has spoken of the possibility of Northern Ireland developing its own NAP, which I think is a very exciting prospect. Our Irish Republic NAP leaves the door open for future work in this direction. We are, of course, a post-conflict country ourselves, and our own peace process has not been exemplary in terms of the participation of women. The Northern Ireland Assembly and the Dáil are alike in being overwhelmingly male, and we live in a country where women who seek refuge are turned away because there simply aren't enough spaces in our refuges, and that is, as is well noticed internationally, a matter of putting their lives at risk. Safe Ireland, which audits the lack of refuge space in this country, has just had its funds not cut but totally taken away. So we hope that the Taoiseach, when he talks of supporting civil society internationally to deal with women suffering from gender-based violence, will remember that it is also an Irish problem. UN Resolution 1325 is about trying to stop the use of rape in conflict. It's also, and just as importantly as has been spoken about this morning, about making sure that women are included in peace processes as equal partners, and that will indeed lead to women being involved in evolving democracies. As Jean pointed out in the earlier meeting, it's well established by now that extreme levels of violence against women during conflict do not simply wither away or cease once the conflict is over. Indeed, they may increase. During Liberia's recent wars, 75% of women in areas where the conflict was most intense were raped. and President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia told me during an interview that the culture of rape has remained in the national psyche and that she and her government are tackling that. Liberia has a Minister for Gender, and its Truth Commission had a special report on gender-based violence, and Aisling has spoken very interestingly about similar processes in Sierra Leone. Gender-based violence, whether in wartime or peacetime, is an extreme expression, a symptom of women's inequality. It is the ultimate expression of disrespect. UN Resolution 1325 recognises this, and our National Action Plan will contribute to ending that inequality and the injustices that flow from it. 1325 is above all about respect for women. We would like to thank Mary Robinson for championing this and other related UN resolutions and for inspiring all of us to believe that national action plans are important. We'd like to thank the Taoiseach and Minister for Foreign Affairs, Eamon Gilmore, for launching the NAP today and for giving such an important speech, and for personally making a commitment to supporting this resolution. We thank the Joint Consortium on Gender-Based Violence for the excellent work it has already done on UN Resolution 1325 and also for allowing this launch to impinge on its annual meeting. We'd like to also thank Inez McCormack. Mary called her strict, wise and bossy. I would say that she brought her formidable diplomatic abilities to the chairing of the consultative process. And I'd just like to note...
She's the only one to like to say that.
I'd just like to mention at this moment that I once had the experience of being sent by a magazine editor to do a soft focus interview with Mary Robinson about her plans to retire to Ireland and play with her grandchildren. But unfortunately, Mary had been informed that I was coming to interview her about UN Resolution 1325. And I can only say that it was a frightening experience. I'd like to thank Nata Navuri. As Mary mentioned, she's sitting very modestly at the back. She did absolutely amazing work and brought exceptional skill to the drafting of the National Action Plan. Shirley Graham, who's sitting down here, for the great sensitivity with which she convened the workshops for women affected by the conflict. And Niamh Riley from NUIG, who convened the technical group and probably had the clearest intellectual understanding of all of us of the need to get this right. And also, as has been mentioned, I'd like to thank Nuala O'Lone for the work that she put into the cross-learning process. We're very glad that this National Action Plan is something that Africans in Ireland can welcome at a time when they're having to deal with the outcomes of violent racism in this country, including the recent gang rape of a young girl in the Irish Midlands. Inez has pointed out that the test of this NAP will be what change we've brought about in 3 years' time, and I look forward, and the National Women's Council looks forward to working with everybody here and many others who support this process in making sure that we do actually make a difference in this period. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Susan and the Consortium, but I'd specifically like to say that in terms of the humiliating narrow spaces in which many women live in this island and elsewhere, they're uncomfortable, they're humiliating and sometimes extremely awkward. There needs to be a cool, measured voice that will speak for them when they can't speak for themselves. And Susan has been that voice, whether it's popular or unpopular. I know from her work as a writer how she has been able to explore the conscience of us all on this island, north and south, in terms of how we tackle the issues that are invisible in our democracy and how to make them present. And perhaps that voice is always necessary to make our democracy itself more practical and more viable. So I'd like to thank her for that. I'd now like to tell you that the Taoiseach, Mary, Susan and Angela, I've got the right order, haven't I think, now have to leave to get a photograph, and then Mary has to leave. I would like you to thank all of them. And I don't think the Taoiseach should mind me saying specifically in terms of Mary, because she has brought this determination and challenge. And every time, I mean, she may talk about me being bossy, me being bossy. This morning we were told, what are you doing in the next 3 years? Okay. And also, as I said again, the Taoiseach for giving the political leadership to be here. So thank you very much indeed. So,